Shitty First Drafts, Annie Lamott from Bird by Bird. Born in San Francisco in 1954, Annie Lamott is a graduate of Goucher College in Baltimore and is the author of 6 novels, including Rosie, 1983, Cruel to Little Heart, 1997, All New People, 2000, and Blue Shoes, 2002. She has also been the food reviewer for California Magazine, a book reviewer for Mediocio, and a regular contributor to Silence Mothers Who Think. Her nonfiction books include Operating Instructions, a journal of my son's first year, 1993, in which she describes her adventures as a single parent, and Tender Mercies, Some Thoughts on Faith, 1999, in which she charts her journey toward faith in God. In the following selection, taken from Lamott's popular book about writing, Bird by Bird, 1994, she argues for the need to let go and write those shitty first drafts that lead to clarity and sometimes brilliance in our second and third drafts. Now, particular even better news than that of short assignments is the idea of shitty first drafts. All good writers write them. This is how they end up with good second drafts and terrific third drafts. People tend to look at successful writers who are getting their books published and maybe even doing well financially and think that they sit down at their desks every morning feeling like $1 million, feeling great about who they are and how much talent they have and what a great story they have to tell. That they take in a few deep breaths, pushing back their sleeves, roll their necks a few times to get all the cricks out, and dive in, typing fully formed passages as fast as a court reporter. But this is just a fantasy of the uninitiated. I know some very good writers you love who write beautifully and have made a great deal of money, and not one of them sits down routinely feeling wildly enthusiastic and confident. Not one of them writes elegant first drafts. All right, one of them does, but we do not like her very much. We do not think that she has a rich inner life or that God likes her or even stand for her. Although when I mentioned this to my priest friend Tom, he said you can safely assume you've created God in your own image when it turns out that God hates all the same people you do. Very few writers really know what they're doing until they've done it, nor do they go about their business feeling dory and thrilled. They do not type a few stiff warm-up sentences and then find themselves bounding along like huskies across the snow. One writer I know tells me that he sits down every morning and says to himself nicely, "It's not like you don't have a choice, but because you do, you can either type or kill yourself." We all often feel like we are pulling teeth, even those writers whose ports end up being the most natural and fluid. The right words and sentences just do not come pouring out like ticker tape most of the time. Now, Muriel Spark is said to have felt that she was taking dictation from God every morning, sitting there, one supposes, plugged into a dictaphone, typing away, humming, but this is a very hostile and aggressive position. One might hope for bad things to rain down on a person like this. For me and most of the other writers I know, writing is not rapturous. In fact, the only way I can get anything written at all is to write really, really shitty first drafts. The first draft is the child's draft, when you let it all pour out and then let it rump all over the place, knowing that no one is going to see it and that you can shape it later. You just let this childlike part of your channel, whatever voices and visions come through and onto the page. If one of the characters wants to say, "Well, so what, Mr. Poopy Pants?" you let her. No one is going to see it. If the kid wants to get into really centennial, whippy, emotional territory, you let him. Just get it all done on paper because there may be something great in those 6 crazy pages that you never have gotten to by more rational grown-up means. There may be something in the very last line of the very last paragraph on page 6 that you just love. This is so beautiful, or wild that you now know what you're supposed to be writing about, more or less, or in what direction you might go. But there was no way to get to this without first getting through the first 5.5 pages. I used to write food reviews for California Magazine before it folded. My writing food reviews had nothing to do with the magazine folding, although every single review did cause a couple of cancelled subscriptions. Some readers took umbrage at my comparing amounts of vegetable puree with various ex-presidents' brains. These reviews always took 2 days to write. First, I'd go to a restaurant several times with a few optioned articulate friends in tow. I'd sit there writing down everything anyone said that was at all interesting or funny. Then on the following Monday, I'd sit down at my desk with my notes and try to write a review. Even after I'd been doing this for years, panic would set in. I'd try to write a lead, but instead I'd write a couple of dreadful sentences, XX them out. Try them, XX them out, and then feel desperate and worry settle on my chest like an X-ray apron. It's over. I think calmly. I'm going to be able to get the magic to work this time. I'm ruined. I'm thorough. And I'm toast. Maybe I think I can get my old job back as a clerk typist, but probably not. I get up and study my teeth in the mirror for a while. Then I'd stop, remember to breathe, make a few phone calls, hit the chicken and chow down. Eventually I'd go back and sit down at my desk and sign for the next 10 minutes. Finally, I would pick up my 1-inch picture frame, stare into it, ask for the answer, and every time the answer would come, all I had to do was to write a really shitty first draft of say, the open paragraph, and no one was going to see it. So I started writing without reining myself in. It was almost just typing, just making the fingers move, and the writing would be terrible. I read a lead paragraph that was a whole page, even though the entire review could only be 3 pages long, and then I'd start writing up descriptions of the food, one dish at a time, bird by bird, and the critics would be sitting on my shoulders, commenting like cartoon characters. They'd be pretending to snore or rolling their eyes at my overall descriptions. No matter how hard I tried to tone those descriptions down, no matter how conscious I was of what a friend said to me gently in my early days of restaurant reviewing, Annie, she said, it is just a piece of chicken. It is just a bit of cake. But because by then I had been writing for so long, I would eventually let myself trust the process, sort of, more or less. I write a first draft that was maybe twice as long as it should be, with a self-indulgent and boring beginning, stupefying descriptions of the meal, lots of quotes from my black humor friends that made them sound more like the Manson Gross than food lovers, and no ending to speak of. The whole thing would be so long and incoherent and heightened that for the rest of the day I'd obsess about getting creamed by a car before I could write a decent second draft. I'd worry that people would read what I'd written and believe that the accident had really become a suicide, that I had panicked because my talent was waning and my mind was shot. The next day, I'd sit down, go through it all with a colored pen, take out everything I possibly could, find a new lead somewhere on the second page, figure out a kickly place to end it, and then write a second draft. It always turned out fine, sometimes even funny and weird and helpful. I'd go over it one more time and meld it in. Then a month later, when it was time for another review, the whole process would start again, complete with the fears that people would find my first draft before I could rewrite it. Almost all good writing begins with terrible first efforts. You need to start somewhere. Start by getting something, anything, down on paper. A friend of mine says that the first draft is the down draft. You just get it done. The second draft is the up draft. You fix it up. You try to say what you have to say more accurately. And the third draft is the dental draft, where you check every tooth to see if it's loose or cramped or decayed, or even, God help us, healthy. First, Lamott says that the perceptions most people have of how writers work is different from the reality of the work itself. She refers to this in paragraph 1 as the fantasy of the uninitiated. What does she mean? Second, in paragraph 7, Lamott refers to a time when, through experience, she eventually let herself trust the process, sort of, more or less. She is referring to the writing process, of course, but why more or less? Do you think that her wariness is personal, or is she speaking for all writers in this regard? Explain. Third, from what Lamott has to say, is writing a first draft more about the product or the process? Do you agree in regard to your own first drafts? Explain.